Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the DLF Trade Show on the DLF YouTube channel. Russ and Addison are here. Just always here.
Always here. When aren't we?
And I kind of wish that tight end was more fun to talk about because we had National Tight End Day this weekend, and I have a tight end right over here. But the tight end trade market is so blah that we did what we usually do. Hey, it's Wednesday. You have any ideas?
Nope.
And then Addison always comes up with this one. It's always great. What did we do last year?
Let me scroll back to this time last year and see what we did.
Yeah, and apparently last year we were talking some cheap QBs. We are halfway-ish. Well, halfway-ish through like the NFL. We're a little halfway past the halfway mark of the fantasy season, right?
The entire fantasy season, yeah.
15.
Yep.
So you should know where you're going at this point. Even if you're 4-4, you know if you're a real 4-4 or if you're 4-4.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know at this point. So what we want to talk about today and what we talked about last year around this time was cheap QBs. And especially if we're talking Superflex here, which I'm sure most of these trades are going to be, having a very solid, I was about to say solid QB2. Some of these guys are scoring QB1 numbers. At least the guys, I don't know who Addison picked. I listed like 7 players. And that's not even to say he only chose of the players I listed. But like these are quarterbacks that don't cost a lot to acquire, not necessarily quarterbacks that aren't scoring really well.
Yeah. So, that I will say the names that you listed a lot of like the default cheap names, the Bakers, Goff, Trevor Lawrence. Those are like the default cheap quarterbacks. I went through and I was looking at the trade finder for multiples of those guys to add them to this show, and they are not cheap.
Lawrence
like
is
the first trade I saw was like a 25 first and something, and I was like, for Baker, and that was done after the Evans and Godwin injuries, and I was thinking that there's going to be some kind of injury discount for Baker for that, but then he produced well without those guys because Kate Otton's amazing. And those guys are not cheap. I even looked on KTC, and those 3 specifically, Baker, Goff, and Lawrence, are the QBs 14, 15, and 16. So I dug deeper. These guys are all outside the top 20, if not even more outside the top 24 in rankings.
See, I love it because do you know points per game where Baker is?
Oh, probably like 3. 2, yeah. Even better.
At least Triadic scorings, we give a little bit more points for yards. It's a point for every 20 instead of 25, so it kind of adds up a little bit. So I don't know if that's different in all y'all's leagues. But yeah, QB2, points per game. And he's still not viewed as someone who's doing that. And the fact that he pulled that off, he pulled off what he did this past week without those stud wide receivers. Like, he should be seen as, to me, like a second-tier quarterback at this point. Like, he's good. I don't think it's a question anymore. And then Trevor Lawrence, I thought I was being a little spicy saying to go acquire him. I'm a little surprised that his price is still up there.
Yeah, it might be still just he's so young and still has upside. And maybe some of BTJ's carrying it a little bit too. Like, we have BTJ hype, so we should like the quarterback that he's attached to.
Yeah,
I do agree though. Lawrence seems cheap, or should be cheap.
Yeah, and fair enough. Like, those would have been my arguments. Besides the fact that he's producing pretty well. But okay, let's get to the quarterbacks we're actually going to talk about. And the first one is really funny because this is like the definition of go get this cheap quarterback, and that's Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins for years has been that scoring as a low end mid QB1, but you're going to get him for QB2 prices. And it seems like it is still that way. It took a little to get going, but we're here not 8 weeks in. Next week is week 9. And Kirk Cousins is Kirk Cousins again. That offense is clicking. Kyle Pitts, 2 touchdowns. Woot, woot. And Drake London is a thing again. Darnell Mooney's the best receiver in the league. Like,
personally, I think they should just play the Buccaneers every week because he put up 35 and 28 on them, and they should just do that every week. Personally, that's my opinion.
I would not argue against it because the Buccaneers also had a good fantasy game also. So
Yeah, exactly. It's like we should have those two play each other every week. We should have the Ravens and the Bengals play each other every week, and we should have the Lions and the Seahawks play each other every week, and that would be fantastic.
Look at this. We're simplifying the schedule for you, NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Easy. All right, so let's go to the trades for Kirk Cousins. The first one we have is a 12-team superflex. It is Kirk Cousins and Tyrone Tracy for Brandon Ayuk. So much to talk about in this trade. First things first, Kirk Cousins, 185, Tyrone Tracy, 33, which I think now needs to go up for a total of 218. Brandon Ayuk, 289.2 by himself. One thing at a time. Is Tyrone Tracy a thing now?
He certainly looks like it. Hopefully he clears the concussion protocol pretty well. Because it even seemed like he was hurt before he left with that concussion too. Like he was just kind of like dazed and confused, you know. But he certainly looks the part. I thought whenever he was doing well, whenever Singletary was out, I was like, I didn't really see him doing anything that was all that different than Singletary, but I was wrong, which I'm in for. I drafted Tracy in a couple places. He's still on my taxi squad in TA11 actually. But yeah, he looks like he could be their running back for the next couple of years.
Okay. All right. So that's more than I thought. I was thinking, because after Sunday, like every single trade offer I got involved someone giving me Tyrone Tracy, and it looked like they were putting value on this man's name. And I mean, I watched the Giants game as much as you can actually watch a Giants game, because they're the Giants and they're just not great.
The only reason I did was because they were playing the Steelers.
Yeah. And he looks fine, but I guess maybe he is a thing. And then Brandon Ayuk, I'm worried. He's 26 now. He's probably not going to be fully healthy till his year 28 season. He'll still be on the Niners at least. Mm-hmm. But and then the beginning of this year really scared me off of him. Like I know he came back without a preseason and all of that stuff, but I don't know if he wasn't on the same page as Purdy, or if, again, I have to keep saying except that one game where he had like 22 fantasy points. But I don't know. It seemed like he wasn't a part of that offense, even though they just paid him a whole lot of money. And then he gets hurt, and now we have to wait a while for him to come back, and then we wait a while for him to come back and be full speed. That's for me to say, I'll easily take the quarterback here. Give me the quarterback that's scoring a lot of points right now, and apparently give me this young running back that has a decent amount of upside, where, I mean, let's face it, Singletary's a fine running back, but he's not above being replaced completely. Mm-hmm. And if Tracy is playing that much better, maybe he does walk away with a 65% running back share. And that's, even if it's on the Giants, that's still a really good thing in the NFL.
Yeah. Yep. I think if you're competing and you just lost Brandon Ayuk, which, I mean, you basically didn't have Brandon Ayuk all year, minus that one game. I think that you can find replacements for Brandon Ayuk production wise. I mean, of course he's not scoring any points, but like over the next year or so, like you could still probably get solid replacements for Brandon Ayuk, that if you really need that quarterback, like if you were riding Justin Fields, if you were thinking that Aaron Rodgers was going to be better than what he was, if, you know, you had hoped that Will Levis or Bryce Young were going to do something and they're not, you know, then you need that quarterback. Kirk Cousins is a very fine one to go after, and he's going to have a little bit of longevity too. It's not like you're just having an 8-week rental with Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
I think this is worth it. I think just go get Cousins, and like you said, get the upside shot on Tracy.
Yeah, and in theory, even if it was just like Ayuk had a less severe injury and was missing just the rest of the season, and we knew he'd be fine for the start of next year, maybe I would feel different about it. But given his age, the length of this injury, and all of that, like, his value is going to be real low when he comes back.
I'm all for Brandon Ayuk. I think that if you are on the opposite side of this makes complete sense if you're rebuilding too. Get rid of the old quarterback, get rid of maybe the potential flash in the pan running back in Tracy, just a day 3 guy. You could bet against the day 3, even if he's good for the remainder of the year. Those guys don't typically have longevity.
Yeah.
And just go get Brandon Ayuk. I mean, we saw, like, this is kind of what was happening with Chris Godwin for the past couple of years. And then look what Godwin was doing this year. Like, he kind of had injuries, and then he was playing out of position. The offense was kind of weird for him. Mike Evans was obviously the guy. But then Godwin is still Chris Godwin. It's not like we haven't seen it before with Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah.
So it might just be he just needs to get healthy and kind of figure out what, like, get out of his own head and just go play ball, dude.
Yeah. And again, I think it might be, I like the idea of this. I think it's just Ayuk that's throwing me off. If it was another wide receiver that was a little younger, like Rashee Rice is a little bit too much of a spike. So is Nico Collins. So like I'm trying to think of other wide receivers that are injured that might be useful to a rebuilding team. And I'm kind of at a loss at the moment. But I like the idea. It's just I'm a little worried about Ayuk.
What about nah, he's too high. What if he just went and got I can't even think of who else would be.
Tank Dell.
Man, that's a good one. That's probably.
And plus, Tank Dell's going to score some points for the next 2 weeks, especially until Nico comes back. But then even when Nico comes back, we might just get what we had last year.
Mm-hmm.
Because thankfully they didn't go out and get Deontay Johnson, because that would have just crushed my Tank Dell shares even more than just that's another. Oh, hey, look at this next trade. Kirk Cousins for Zay Flowers. Let's talk about Deontay Johnson going to the Ravens. Are you worried about Zay Flowers with Deontay Johnson being traded to the Ravens?
Yep. Yeah, and already semi-small pie. They have been throwing a lot more. They've been in more shootout games. So Flowers has been doing well over the past, I won't say he's been doing well every week, but in these shootout games, he's been doing really well. But then you add Deontay Johnson. I mean, they kind of are, but kind of aren't the same player. It's kind of weird. They're both maybe more slot or kind of short to intermediate kind of guys, good route runners, but they can win deep, or they can make explosive plays happen with some yak. But I think, I think Deontay Johnson just hurts Zay Flowers. I think it's unfortunate for both of them. But it helps Lamar, and it's an excellent NFL move.
It's an excellent NFL move.
Fantastic. Yeah.
I think this hurts the tight ends and Justice Hill more than it does Zay Flowers. I keep going to say Brandon Flowers, but I'm pretty sure that's the lead singer of the Killers. I'm fine with Zay Flowers. I'm not super worried. He has earned targets over everyone else on this team, and that matters. And I know that Deontay Johnson is just so good at getting open, but I think you're more likely to get a screen to Zay Flowers than you are to Deontay Johnson. And I think you're more likely to get, it almost seems like he runs wheel routes, but I know that's just what they call them out of the back. And I'm completely blanking on what the real name of the route is called. Where you sort of just go out and then up. Those seem to be Zay Flowers' bread and butter. And I think Deontay Johnson is more just over the middle. So I'm really that it doesn't really affect Zay Flowers. Plus, again, this is only Deontay Johnson 1 year deal he's on, so he's a free agent at the end of the year anyway. So dynasty wise, I don't think I'm worried for Zay Flowers. Yeah,
it's just they're trying to beef up their receiver room to go actually. They are that one contending team that has lost in the playoffs every year, and they're so annoying that they're so annoyed that they can't break that. Get over that hump.
Like we both said, this is a beautiful NFL move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That being said, Kirk Cousins 184.8, Zay Flowers 362.3. And I get that we're going to ding Zay Flowers a little bit, but I still think Zay Flowers is worth more. But I also think this is absolutely fine. If this happened, I would have been okay. But maybe you get a second coming back.
Yeah, or you can get somebody that's not 36 years old. Maybe somebody that's more in their late 20s, or at the very least 30. I bet you could get Baker for Zay Flowers.
Yes, that's a beautiful way to put that. This isn't bad, but I think you can do better. And Baker is doing better.
Certainly better. Or Jared Goff or Trevor Lawrence. Those guys that have more longevity or are producing better, or both. Zay Flowers still holds weight for dynasty.
Yes.
Even maybe the next 8 weeks might not be as good.
And now we move on to someone I am actually thrilled that we can talk about in an aspect where we're saying good things. because this has been a rough season for Matt Stafford. Like losing both his receivers, losing, I think it was 2 or 3 offensive linemen, and the team just didn't really do anything about it. Like,
yeah. Well, we got our Super Bowl. This was fun.
Yeah, and then it was like Cooper Kupp's on the block, and let's go do this. And then they beat the Vikings, and it's like, maybe he's not. But no, I love that Matt Stafford is back in a place where we are talking about acquiring him, because his value is pretty low, to at least in my estimations from what I've seen, where he's my QB2 on a lot of my teams. And I was trying to use him to upgrade for other quarterbacks, and it was seemingly very difficult. So I'm very curious to see these trades. Do you have anything you want to say about Stafford before we get into it?
No, I mean, yeah, like you said, he's had a really rough year, but last week with Puka and Kupp fully healthy against the Vikings defense, that gave me a lot of encouragement that we could have a really good second half of the year.
Yep. Let Kupp stay now that it's here, even though for your sake he'll probably end up in Pittsburgh, because they've been looking for a wide receiver all season.
Yes, that'd be fantastic.
All right, so I almost said Cooper Kupp trades. Matt Stafford trades. That's what we're here to talk about. 12-team Superflex. Matt Stafford for Justin Fields in a 25-second. Matt Stafford 175.3 by himself. Justin Fields 130, and the second is 111 for a total of 241. So we're overpaying to go get the better asset. It feels like the value is probably fine. Justin Fields clearly, well, I don't want to say clearly, but like most likely a dead asset for the rest of this season. But he is a free agent. Feel like he probably played well enough to at least get a competition for a starting spot next year.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the free agent quarterback class is not great. It's him and Darnold.
And Russ.
Oh, that's right. Well, yeah. And like Ryan Tannehill.
Well, Tannehill's still a free agent.
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to think of someone really not good so I can sarcastically go, yay.
Oh, Mac Jones is a free agent.
Yay.
And Zach Wilson. And Trey Lance.
Yay.
And Dalton and Flacco and Jameis are free agents. That's all I needed to see.
Oh, never mind. This is a great
and Mason Rudolph. He's playing for a job next year.
He didn't look completely terrible this past weekend. I loved all those Ridley targets. Let me tell you that, though. Okay, but like, so I think Justin Fields, if anything else, especially coupled with a not great draft QB class, that there's a good chance that Fields can come in, worst case scenario, as a bridge, for someone who drafts a running styled quarterback. So I see this as a rebuilding versus competing move. Do you need to give up both of these pieces to get Stafford? Do you think? Yeah, I think you do. This is fine. Give me Stafford. If I'm rebuilding, I don't think that's a lie. I would take this risk. I like this trade. This is fun. I like this. With Kupp and Puka back, Stafford's going to score some points for the rest of the season, assuming they both stay there and healthy. And then Fields is a fun risk. This is one of those things where it's not a lot, because how much more than a second is Stafford really worth? Not really all that much. So getting someone who might be a starting QB next season, I think, is a really good gamble. Yeah,
and you're thinking that if that's your 25-second, that's the 210, 211, ideally the 212. It's a super late pick. That plus a quarterback that has upside but is currently not doing anything, and may never do anything really significant again, but we'll kind of see. He might just be, I've kind of compared him to Marcus Mariota, that he just kind of might do whatever and go out and throughout being a journeyman quarterback that has fantasy upside when he actually plays. It's just getting him on the field is the struggle. I think if you're a competing team, I think that this is a pretty easy move if you, especially if you were really riding Justin Fields.
Yeah.
And again, like you had other quarterback injuries or other quarterbacks that weren't doing well. I think this is a pretty easy way just to go get Matthew Stafford. And I'm looking at the 4-for-4 rest of season fantasy schedule, like the strength of schedule for players.
Yeah.
And the Rams actually have the second hardest remainder of the season schedule.
Oof.
But I'm seeing a lot of good teams that have kind of good defenses, but they kind of can get into shootouts. So like the Dolphins, which I don't know if the Dolphins are a good pass defense or if that's more of a product of they were just so bad without Tua that the teams didn't need to pass on them. I wonder, maybe that's that. But with Tua back, that could be a shootout. They they get the Patriots. We'll see. The Eagles, that could be a shootout. They still have the Saints, the Bills, that's a shootout. So that's the Niners, that's a shootout. And then the Jets, which were a good defense, but then haven't really been a good defense since they fired Saleh. And then they get the Arizona Cardinals in championship week, who are one of the weaker defenses against opposing quarterbacks.
So let's move on to the next one where it's straight up Matt Stafford for Devontae Adams. Stafford 175.3, Devontae Adams 211.7, and I'm doing this for Stafford every time.
Interesting. I was very curious to see how you were going to react to this trade.
Give me a quarterback. I mean, if Devontae Adams was still on the Raiders or a team where he was just, I guess I can't even say that for the Raiders because they have Bowers now, but still like the wide receiver, like the person to pass the ball to, I would feel a lot different about it. I don't think we're going to walk out of every week with Devontae Adams scoring 17 to 27 points like he normally would. Like the Jets brought their dysfunction, their whatever. They're so bad I can't think of the right words for dysfunction. Yes. I got there.
Dysfunction.
To the Rodgers and Adams connection, and it's hopefully things start to click again, but who knows? To me, you can replace Adams a lot more than you'll be able to replace Stafford's points here. And okay, let me put it this way: if I'm giving up Stafford, I want something better than a 31-year-old wide receiver that's not producing super well right now.
That's a good way to put it. Especially, it is a weird trade where it seems like it's like competing with competing. It's not one of those competing with rebuild trades that are just so easy to do at this point in the year. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a lot easier to find Devontae Adams replacement than it is to find a Matthew Stafford replacement, especially if he has like a top 20, top 15 rest of season, basically at the quarterback position.
Exactly.
Right now, Devontae Adams he's scoring the same amount as Wandale. So you can just go get Wandale and you're getting Devontae Adams level production.
Yeah.
Or JSN.
Or I tried to cut you off, but you kept talking, you rude person. We're not expecting a top 5, top 10 production out of Matthew Stafford, especially at these prices. So like it doesn't make sense to not get better production from another position when making this trade.
Right.
But don't send Stafford for Wandale. Just to put it out there. He's saying go get Wandale cheaper.
Yeah, I'm saying trade Adams for Stafford, and then if you are like, oh crap, now I need a wide receiver replacement, go get Wandale, go get Khalil Shakir, go get Jacoby Myers, go get Romeo Dobbs. Those are all guys that are scoring plus or minus 1 fantasy point of Devontae Adams right now.
Exactly. There you go. All right, so let's move on to our not last quarterback. All right, we're doing more. I scrolled too far. This guy's team's quarterback and aforementioned Russell Wilson, who has looked good since coming in. I think they have a bye week this week, though, which kind of
they're on bye.
Kind of puts a little deflation in our excitement for it. But still, talk about Russell Wilson. Tell us why he's a good buy right now.
Because he's amazing. He's like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Future Hall of Famer. He looks like he's straight out of 2014, and the Steelers are going to win the Super Bowl this year. Is there any more reason other than that?
You're up here. We need you maybe right over here.
Okay. All right. That's fair. No, I mean, in all honesty, he's looked very good, and his fantasy performance should have been better on Monday night had Broderick Jones not been the worst offensive lineman in the entire league and called back a George Pickens touchdown, and if the NFL wasn't dumb and instead ruled that 2 feet, 1 foot twice equals 2 feet, there's another touchdown. So I mean, just the fact that he's come in and he had 25 fantasy points in his first start. He had 14 Monday night, but again, he should have had 2 more touchdowns, or at least 1 more. I think 1 more could have gotten him up to 18. That would have been nice. And I just think that he's going to be really good for the remainder of the year, and he's elevated this passing offense. He has George Pickens. Maybe they go acquire another wide receiver. I'm not buying Russell Wilson thinking they're going to go out and buy somebody else, but it's possible that they add somebody else to this room. Maybe they go out and get Tyler Lockett. I've seen that rumored very heavily that they could go get Lockett to reunite with him. And then the Seahawks get off of Lockett in that way. But and then looking at the 4-for-4 strength of schedule, they have a top 10 or 11 strength of schedule for the remainder of the year for quarterbacks. Because they still have to play, Baltimore twice. That's always fun to play Baltimore's pass defense,
especially if you can
Cincinnati.
Like right now, what, 3 of their D-backs are hurt?
Basically. I mean, they get Washington after the bye, Baltimore twice, Cincinnati, and Philadelphia. So that's a pretty good grouping of teams to play for the remainder of the year. So and he's valued so low. Like, people just still do not care about Russell Wilson. He's like the cheapest of the cheap.
All right, I mean, let's go see what that looks like. 12-team super. Oh man, now I can't stop thinking about Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett back together. Plus, that means all the JSN targets in Seattle.
Wouldn't that be awesome? I'm telling you, dude, Pittsburgh, make it happen.
Make it happen, Pittsburgh.
If teams are getting Nuke and Deontay Johnson for 5th, Lockett should be like a 7th.
First of all, rude.
I mean, that was not a dig on the players. I'm just saying that was, for some reason, these players they should be higher, but they're not. And so I think that should make Tyler Lockett a little cheaper, because I don't think he's as good as those guys. He's older, less longevity.
I'll let it slide this time. All right, so 12-team Superflex, Russell Wilson trades. Terry McLaurin and Russell Wilson for Brandon Ayuk and Michael Wilson. Touchdown scorer, Michael Wilson. Here we go. Terry McLaurin, 245. Russell Wilson, 43. That'll update after next ADP when he's actually a starter. He'll raise up a little bit. In DLF ADP, he was like QB 36. On Keep Trade Cut, he's the QB 30. So big jump. Yeah, so I think he'll probably go up to that.
Go behind Justin Fields.
He'll probably go up to that, like Matt Stafford, Kirk Cousins value of that 175-ish. So Terry McLaurin and Russell Wilson to come in together at 288. Brandon Ayuk, 289. And Michael Wilson, 27 for a total of 316. Value-wise, this feels fine to me. This is going to be another one of those competing versus rebuilding things where we're waiting on Ayuk to get better. Michael Wilson has always seemed pretty good. And, I mean, we have our reality of what he is since they have Marvin Harrison Jr. there. But this feels like I would just much rather have this production of Russell Wilson and Terry McLaurin with how well they're both scoring right now. Mm-hmm. Like, Terry McLaurin is doing really, really well. I'm all in on Jaden Daniels, like to the point where I want T in Washington next season. That would probably hurt Terry McLaurin, but I think that they're adding a wide receiver. They'd be dumb not to. They have to. Like, I'm honestly, I'm a little. They were in on the Ayuk chaos before the season started. So it's a little surprising we haven't heard any more rumors of them going after a wide receiver. Maybe they're just looking towards free agency or the draft, and they're just trying to not upset what's going on right now with trades. T. Higgins would be fun. I'm in on it. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of their jerseys, but him getting to play with Jaden Daniels is enough for me to put that red weirdness right over here. Maybe you get the black one. Get the black Commanders jersey. I'd have to go look that up. Okay, but this trade, yeah, for me, this is very like this is the McLaurin and Wilson side, and I don't really. Again, maybe it's just the fact it's my feelings and fears of Ayuk and his age and all of that stuff, where it just. I get that you want to get off these older players and you want to get these points off your team. Feel like there's has to be a better way, and if there isn't, yeah, fine, take this and hope that Ayuk has some hype when he starts coming back. Yeah, I think that this is you very easily the Russ and Terry McLaurin side because you're trading off of Brandon Ayuk for Terry McLaurin, which I think is a fantastic trade in and of itself, especially if you're a competing team that you lost Brandon Ayuk, just to be able to go over and get Terry McLaurin. You gain a little bit of age, but you're getting the production now. I feel like that's a very easy trade. And it's something that is possible on the other side. If a team is rebuilding and trying to shed some of the points, shed a little bit of age, they get 3 years younger. That works out well. So you're effectively moving Michael Wilson for Russell Wilson.
and I will take the Russell version of the Wilsons. And and that's it. I mean, I really don't think that you need to trade much more than a Michael Wilson type of player. I mean, that maybe it's not Michael Wilson, but maybe it's, you know, Dontavian Wicks or Jalen Tolbert or, you know, Adonai Mitchell or somebody like that. Like if you have some kind of younger, maybe fun name at the wide receiver position that has upside and potential, but he's like your wide receiver 6 or 7, and you need a quarterback, that's so easy to do.
Like imagine you had Cedric Tillman sitting on your roster. You had no idea who he was, and all of a sudden he's putting up 20 fantasy points a week. You can go get a quarterback right now.
I low-key think Cedric Tillman has more long-term value, but
I agree. I have to be honest. I was a fan of him coming into the league just because he's gigantic. That is like, I love me some big, tall wide receivers.
Big Tennessee wide receiver?
No, that's don't do that. No.
Okay, my bad.
That is reserved. But yeah, no, I to me, give me the players right here. And by the way, black jerseys are nice looking.
I'm telling you, dude, black jersey, T. Higgins.
All right, let's move on to the next Russell Wilson. I love that there's so many 1-for-1s. It makes such a nice, easy conversation. Russell Wilson straight up for DeAndre Hopkins. Wilson coming in at 42.9, Hopkins 55.5. The wide receiver position in Kansas City, I just don't think is going to be a thing unless you're an aberration or an anomaly or whatever you want to call Tyreek Hill. Like it, I'm not buying in that DeAndre Hopkins is going to start eating just because he's getting thrown by Patrick Mahomes.
Rashee Rice is really good, and he's a lot better than DeAndre Hopkins is right now.
And not to say they even play the same position, but still, it's this. I don't want to sell a quarterback for 1 year's hopes and dreams. Like if I'm selling this quarterback, I want someone that I know is scoring these points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did the whole point per game with Devontae Adams. Well, DeAndre Hopkins is even worse. Ray McLeod is scoring the same number of points per game as DeAndre Hopkins this year.
Not if you get in return yardage points also, and Ray is probably beating him.
Kayshon Boutte with Drake May, the resurgence of Kayshon Boutte. Josh Palmer, who I think I didn't even know was even like playing games anymore. I thought it was just Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston. Josh Palmer scoring the same fantasy points.
He had a bunch of catches this past week. But yeah, he's not really.
Nick Westbrook-Ikine. More fantasy.
He's catching touchdowns, man.
Nelson Aguilar.
Also catching touchdowns, which is really annoying.
Yep. So yeah, DeAndre Hopkins has been really bad this year, and I agree with you. I don't think that Patrick Mahomes now all of a sudden fixes DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, exactly. Like as a quarterback talent, of course you want your players to go play with the good quarterbacks, but that offensive scheme isn't built to produce wide receiver scoring.
Russell Wilson.
All right, so the last one we have to talk about. Yep, last one. Jameis Winston named the starter for the rest of the season, at least in Cleveland, which it's the right call.
Yeah, it was the right call 5 weeks ago, but
yeah. All right, so Jameis Winston, 12-team Superflex. Jameis Winston for a 25 third and Trey Palmer. Caution, Team B is giving up the highest value asset and the most pieces in the deal because Jameis Winston comes in at 32.4 and a third comes in at 49.9 and Trey Palmer at 3.6 for a total of 53.5. Of course, you're not getting Jameis Winston for less than this. But for a quarterback that has the ability to just have some games, you easily pay a third, and I liked the idea of Trey Palmer, but it just seems like he's not going to be a thing, even with all of those wide receivers out.
Yeah, they did a good job of utilizing the fact that Godwin and Evans are hurt and moved off of a roster clogger and Trey Palmer. This is the type of framework that I would love to do to go buy Jameis Winston is, hey, I got this third. I'm going to throw you somebody else so you don't have to go pick up somebody that's slightly better than being on the waiver wire, but not really. Yeah. Like could probably be one of your first cuts if you had to cut down, or you made some bigger trade that involved you having to cut people. Somebody like a Trey Palmer would be a good name like that.
Yeah, I had a trade that was sent to me, and it was before Jameis was announced as the rest of season starter, and someone just wanted Roman Wilson for him. And I let it sit there for like a day and a half. And within 24 hours, Jameis gets announced the starter, Roman Wilson gets shelved on the IR, and that trade got revoked.
Yeah. I will say that Cleveland's strength of schedule, according to 444, is the worst, is the hardest for the remainder of the year.
Oh my!
Because they still have to play Pittsburgh twice, which Pittsburgh gives up yards. They don't really give up the touchdowns.
Yeah,
but I think that Winston could just throw, and it probably doesn't really matter if he's throwing pick sixes. That means he's got to come out and throw more touchdowns. So that's vintage Jameis Winston. They get Denver in there too, but they do get Cincinnati and Kansas City and that Miami defense that I think is still just because teams didn't need to pass on them.
Yeah. Love the corporate synergy, by the way.
Yeah. 444 and
yeah,
DLF. Let's love it. Would you, I only included this one trade for Jameis Winston, but is he someone that like you would go out and trade for? That's what I just wanted to append him onto here as like, he fits probably the cheapest 8-game rental that you could possibly imagine. It's like him and Joe Flacco. If Joe Flacco was the starter for the remainder of the year,
I'm not so one, but yes, I'd rather Joe Flacco over Jameis Winston.
You'd rather have Flacco than Winston.
Yeah.
If they both played the remainder.
If I knew they were both playing the rest of the year, I would want Flacco over Jameis.
Is that like a weapon take? Like Flacco has better weapons?
We saw what Flacco did on the team that Jameis is on.
Yeah.
And we saw what Flacco did when it's the game and a half of being here. Like I'm sold on Flacco being elite, baby. Let's go. But also, yes, weapons for sure.
Yeah, I get that. But I think that, and maybe this is just me being starry-eyed because this has been like Jameis's potential for like 3 years now. But like, it really does feel like he could, if he plays well for the remainder of the year, he could get that bridge job next year. Like he could potentially, like, I'm not going to say that he's going to go in like Sam Darnold or Geno Smith somewhere, but like taking it back to the Steelers with Russ, like we had Mitch Trubisky a few years ago with a rookie Kenny Pickett. Like I could see Jameis being that Mitch Trubisky player to start the year, or maybe he's, Mariota or Desmond Ridder or somebody like that, or he's maybe at best he's like Ryan Tannehill, kind of resurrects his career like Tannehill did and has 1 or 2 seasons of for fantasy football. That's good. So I think that's where the difference maker is for me and Flacco. Flacco does not have that opportunity.
Correct. Flacco is not going to go start somewhere next year. Flacco probably doesn't want to go and start somewhere next year. I got to get hit again. Fair. What?
Yeah. But can you imagine, like, if the Jets said, screw it, we're getting rid of everything, and Aaron Rodgers moves on, and they just go get Jameis Winston? That would be fun.
Yes.
That would be fun.
Wilson. Yes.
Or the Giants do the same thing. They say, you know what, screw you, Daniel Jones. We're just going to go get Jameis.
Give me someone a little better to throw the ball to Neighbors. That would make me feel a little better. At least
they'd throw the ball to Neighbors.
At least they would throw,
a bunch of times.
A lot. I love it.
Look what he's doing with Cedric Tillman right now, dude. I mean, imagine that was Malik Neighbors.
Like a 1.5 difference between the two of them, though. On that note, this has been the DLF Trade Show on the DLF YouTube channel. Russ Fisher, Dynasty Outhouse, Addison Hayes, Adam Hayes _. We'll catch you next time.